Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Crafty Crow Show. Today's episode, we're going on a road trip, as you can tell. And where are we going on a road trip to? We're going to one of my favorite things to look at in history, and the favorite time eras in history for me, which is the Civil War. Just love things about the Civil War. So today we're going to a site in Richmond, Kentucky that I've never been to, and we're going to go learn about together. So stick with us, come with us. Let's go find out what kind of Civil War sites there are in Richmond. Richmond, for those of you that don't know, is in Kentucky, central Kentucky. It's 15 minutes south of the town of Lexington, and it's real close. Any of you that like history, when Daniel Boone came through the Cumberland Gap, made his way up into Kentucky, he settled a fort in Boonesboro, which is just right above Richmond. It's pretty much, right between Richmond and Lexington. You've got Boonesboro there, and then you've got the city of Richmond. I don't know the history of the city, but Richmond grew up, and it became one of the first major engagements in Kentucky for the Civil War, and the first major battles. I think Union troops from Fort Nelson, which is a little bit south of Nicholasville, had come over. That was the recruitment camp, was Camp Nelson, had come over to Richmond to defend against Confederate troops coming up from the south. Confederate movements come through Cumberland Gap up. Then you had the Battle of Barberville, then on to Camp Wildcat there at London, and they just progressively made their way north. So they finally got engaged with a larger unit of Union forces at Richmond and had the Battle of Richmond. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go to that battlefield. I'm just going to show you around some, try to give you some of the history of it, and just, like I said, we're taking a road trip. We're going to learn together on this one. So let's get up to Richmond and see what we can find. Pleasant View, which this home is called, formerly known as the Barnett House, was built by Joseph Barnett in 1825. Barnett was a large landowner and Madison County magistrate. Originally, this was the front of the original home. One slave quarters of 3 can be seen here in the foreground, along with the smokehouse, ice house, and barns. Barnett owned 578 acres and 20 slaves in 1825, and the home is constructed as a 2-story Federal-style brick house, with the walls being 4 brick thick, a total of 6 rooms with pine flooring.
In 1856, a man by the name of Kavanaugh Armstrong purchased the home and portion of the land. He raised several different types of livestock and crops and was the only landowner in the area to raise tobacco in small quantities. Records show he owned about 200 acres and 2 slaves in 1860. Little did he know that his home and his property were soon to be placed in the middle of what was to become the Battle of Richmond. In August of 1862, Confederate leadership had decided to push north into neutral Kentucky from Tennessee was needed. Pro-Confederate political forces in the Union held border state of Kentucky needed help to take the state from neutral to Confederate, and new recruits for the Confederate Army was needed. Plus, the control of Kentucky meant control of the Ohio River, so goods and arms could be moved up the Mississippi all the way into the Heartland to aid in northern campaigns for the South. So in August, Major General Kirby Smith's Army of Kentucky with 6,500 Confederate troops departed Knoxville, Tennessee, bypassing the heavily fortified Cumberland Gap, and entered into a drought-laden and extremely heat-wave-stricken eastern Kentucky. Meanwhile, General Braxton Bragg's army in Mississippi entered from Chattanooga, Tennessee into the western portion of Kentucky. Bragg would push toward Louisville, while Smith pushed toward Lexington, and the two would meet in the middle in Frankfort and have all the major cities of Kentucky. This was known as the Confederate Heartland Offensive. One of Smith's advanced cavalry forces, a Louisiana regiment under command of Colonel John Scott, met with Union troops at a place called Big Hill on August 23rd. And after routing these Union forces, they pushed to Richmond to demand its surrender. But they soon found a group of Union infantry advancing from Lexington and had to retreat south to rejoin the main body of Smith's army. This set the stage for the Battle of Richmond. 6 days later, on August 29th, Smith's Confederate Army of Kentucky advanced north, with Colonel Scott's cavalry again out front. In the late afternoon, Scott's cavalry engaged Union forces in Rogersville, just south of Richmond, and was forced to retreat. Union cavalry chased Scott south down the old state road, now Highway 421, until they met encamped Confederate infantry commanded by Brigadier General Patrick Cleburne. After a short skirmish, Union troops withdrew back north to disengage. This would conclude the day's fighting, but the main battle was yet to come. Union troops were under the command of Brigadier General Mahlon Manson in this area, and he was the commanding officer. His superior was Major General Buell Nelson, which happened to be in Lexington with a force of his own at the time of the engagement. On the morning of August 30th, Manson had already ordered his 4 regiments to an area just south of the Mount Zion Church, placing 3 regiments on the east side of the road and 1 regiment on the west side. With more reinforcements close and on the way, Manson thought of himself to be in a secure location to protect the city. The battle was divided into 3 phases. The morning of the 30th started about 5:30 a.m. with Phase 1. Cleburne's division, which is here, started moving forward before daylight, and Brigadier General Thomas Churchill's division, who had made it to the Big Hill area overnight, started moving to the Kingston area, where the first phase was taking place. This whole area was considered Kingston. That's why it's got Kingston Pike. So Churchill, paying no attention to that, he wouldn't hear it yet. You had Cleburne that was here and already starting to engage by about 7 that morning, I think it was. Manson, after receiving word of Cleburne's advancements, began an artillery bombardment around 7 a.m. In response, the Confederates brought their artillery up and began to return fire. In the middle of this artillery battle was Barnett House, where we are today. You can see Barnett House there. You had cannons here, and here. So the house is right in the direct line of fire between these 2 batteries of cannons. After a couple of hours, Cleburne began his assault on the Union left flank, which would have been around areas now occupied by the Bluegrass Army Depot, which is all this area in here. So a lot of this part of the battlefield is the Bluegrass Army Depot now. But he advanced out on this left flank. After a short while, Manson felt his left flank was being exposed and ordered the troops from the west side of the old state road, which is these guys, to reinforce his left side. So these guys to come over here and reinforce. What Manson did not know was that General Smith had ordered Churchill's army, made mostly of troops from Texas and Arkansas, had arrived on the battlefield and been ordered to move down a hidden ravine just back of Barnett House, now known as Churchill's Draw, to attack Manson's now weakened right flank. So Churchill arrives. Manson doesn't know this. You can see right here, we'll zoom in a little bit more, there's a draw right here. So this is kind of a little valley. You got hills on both sides. They drop down into this little draw, and you see it ends right here around Palmer House and where Mount Zion Church is. They were going to attack this flank. So apparently the Confederates knew the movements and where all Manson's troops was, but Manson didn't know where all the Confederate troops were, and that was to be his big mistake. Although a 2nd Federal Brigade under Brigadier General Charles Cruft began arriving on the field from Richmond for reinforcement, they were deployed one regiment at a time instead of in full force. When Churchill's army had emerged from the ravine, the right flank was assaulted around Mount Zion Church and soon caused Manson's entire right flank to collapse. And you can see, we'll show you some pictures around Mount Zion Church here. Mount Zion Church was being used as a hospital at this point for wounded soldiers, and Churchill come right into the church. You can see here on the walls there are some, looks like bullet holes in the brick where bullets have bounced off the building. There's a couple of cannonball sites. I couldn't really find them. I didn't know which ones were which, but I could tell these look like bullet holes. So there was a lot of battling going on right here. And you can see he just collapsed this whole right flank. Coupled with Cleburne's pressure on the left flank, which would have been over here, the entire Union line retreated in full order to the area around Rogers' house to the north. So between this, they kind of pinched them, and they all retreated back up the road here. This was the completion of phase 1, and it was only 11 in the morning. So in 4 hours, this whole thing took place and routed the Union Army up the road to Rogers' house. And here is Rogers' house. Phase 2 began around Rogers' house, which is now the visitor center and museum for the battlefield. I've got a picture of the house here, but unfortunately it was closed and I couldn't get in it. But looking at the website, which you should check out too, it's definitely a place for you to visit when exploring the battlefield and can probably help you understand the battle a whole lot more than I'm giving you on this. So Mason realized his position near the Rogers house was not very good. So before Claiborne could come up, both he and Cruft retreated to the area of the Duncannon Road, Old State Road intersection. And we'll bring you up here for phase 2. There's Duncannon Road and Old State Road intersection right here. So after moving up the road, Churchill was ordered to attack the Union right flank. So you can see here again, Churchill, that had come up that draw, they just kept up on that side of the road. Both these forces stayed on each side of the road. Come right up, he was ordered to attack this right flank of the Union Army. And Claiborne's force, which was now under the command of Colonel Preston Smith, due to Claiborne being wounded in the jaw earlier in the day and retiring from the field, was to confront Manson's troops to the east. After only a 30-minute fight, the demoralized and weakened Union troops retreated again in full order for Richmond. By 1:30 in the afternoon, this was the end of phase 2. So 30 minutes of fighting, these guys again crumbled and retreated on up to Richmond. So by the time of the end of phase 2, overall Federal Commander for Kentucky, Buell Nelson, had learned of the morning engagement and how his troops had been routed twice. He arrived on the field in Richmond and took command of his troops. He ordered what was left of his command to form a line in the Richmond Cemetery just south of the city. This would be the start of phase 3. So again, the Union troops created a third line to try to hold off this Confederate advancement. With sunset fast approaching, General Smith ordered his Confederate troops to again attack the Union right flank, forcing it and the entire Union line to collapse through the cemetery. Panicked Federal troops filled the streets of Richmond in mass confusion. Smith ordered Scott's cavalry to make a wide sweep to the west and north of Richmond in hopes of cutting off any escape routes to Lexington. Just after dark, Scott's cavalry found and hit the routed Federals about 2 miles north of Richmond and captured nearly the entire command, including General Manson. Of the 7,000 total Union troops that ended up being engaged during the battle, only about 500 were able to escape unharmed or uncaptured. Nelson was able to escape, but his forces in the eastern half of the state had almost completely vanished by the day's end. With the arrival of Brigadier General Henry Heth's division to the area, Smith's remaining 2 divisions went on to capture Lexington on September 1st, and then on to Frankfort on September 2nd. This rapid movement shows there was virtually no opposition by Union forces to their movements. Frankfort was the only Union state capital to fall during the entire Civil War. As Bragg arrived in western central Kentucky, however, most of Smith's forces were scattered across the Bluegrass region, ranging as far as Shelbyville to the west and Florence to the north, which covered most of northern Kentucky. By late September, it seemed that Kentucky had fallen into Confederate hands. But due to Nelson's quick reorganization and troop movements, and due to the fact that Bragg and Smith could never combine their armies into a single fighting force, the hopes of the Confederacy gaining Kentucky was lost in the Battle of Perryville on October 8th. After a Union victory here, and with lack of support from citizens of Kentucky to the Southern cause, Bragg and Smith were forced to retreat back into Tennessee by the end of October. Aside from the Battle of Richmond opening up the door for the Confederates to capture the state capital in Frankfort, most Civil War scholars classify the Battle of Richmond as the most complete Confederate victory of the entire Civil War, and it is the only example during the entire war of the Union force ceasing to exist at the end of battle.
That's it, boys and girls, the Battle of Richmond and the battlefield. Thought it'd be a fun trip to take you all on, kind of an impromptu trip, but like I said, I love Civil War history, and that was just a place I hadn't been. So both of us got to learn something on this trip. So, I'm heading back to Heartland, trying to get back in my nice comfy recliner and pop out the old computer to edit this video for you. I hope you all enjoyed the trip. Hope you enjoyed coming along for the little road trip, field trip. I'm still excited, road trip or field trip or both. But hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you got some laughs, and I hope you learned something. Go visit the Richmond battlefield. It's a great little place, and gorgeous old house, gorgeous property. Until then, though, love one another as the good Lord tells you. We'll see you guys on the next video.